Hi, welcome to another video. So, Hermes Agent 0.16 is out, and this one is called the Surface release. And honestly, this is a very fitting name, because I already talked about Hermes Agent Desktop in a previous video, and in that video the main point was that Hermes finally became much easier to see and understand. But this release is bigger than just, there is a desktop app now. This is about Hermes getting proper surfaces, a native desktop app, a much more complete web dashboard, better setup, better model selection, better remote gateway support, and a cleaner skill system. So let's get right into it. First, the scale of this release is pretty crazy. So this is not a tiny patch release. This is a pretty large step for Hermes. Now, the headline feature is obviously Hermes Desktop. I already showed the desktop app in detail, so I'm not going to repeat the whole walkthrough here. But the important change in 0.16 is that the desktop app is now part of the main Hermes story. It is not just some separate experiment. It is a real native app for macOS, Linux, and Windows. You get a proper chat window, streaming responses, a searchable session list, session archive, drag and drop files into chat, clipboard, image paste, a command palette, and the model picker right in the status bar. So if someone looked at Hermes before and thought, this is interesting, but it feels too much like a terminal tool, this release directly addresses that, and that matters a lot. Because a good agent can have a ton of features, but if the only way to understand those features is by reading config files and terminal logs, most people will never use it properly. The desktop app changes that. It makes sessions, models, skills, profiles, messaging, cron, and subagents feel more visible. That is why this release is called Surface. Hermes already had a lot of powerful internals. Now those internals are getting real user-facing surfaces. The next big part is remote gateway support in the desktop app. This is actually one of the most important changes for serious users. The desktop app does not have to run Hermes locally. You can point it at a remote Hermes gateway and sign in through OAuth or with a username and password. So your laptop can just be the GUI while the actual agent runs on a server, a homelab machine, a hosted box, or maybe a teammate's machine. That is a very practical setup. Because your API keys, your compute, your long-running tasks, and your gateway integrations may not belong on your laptop. They may belong on a machine that stays online. And now the desktop app can connect to that. They also added multi-profile sessions. Each profile can point to its own remote host, and you can run concurrent sessions across profiles in one window. So instead of Hermes being one local agent tied to one local setup, it starts to feel more like a control panel for multiple agent environments. That is quite powerful. Now, the web dashboard also got a major upgrade. Previously, the dashboard was useful, but it was still more like a place to view and manage parts of Hermes. In this release, it becomes much closer to a full admin panel. You can configure the MCP catalog with enable and disable toggles. You can manage messaging channels, you can manage credentials, webhooks, hook creation, memory configuration, gateway controls, and system settings. There is also a system page with update checks and debug sharing. And there is a channels page for configuring gateway messaging platforms from the browser. So if you want to connect Hermes to Telegram, Discord, Slack, or another platform, the goal is that you can do more of that visually instead of SSHing into a server and editing YAML. That is a big usability improvement, and again, it matches the theme of the release. Hermes is not just adding more hidden power. It is making the power easier to operate. The onboarding also got easier. There is now quick setup through Now's portal, so first-time setup has two clearer paths. You can do quick setup, sign in with Now's portal, get a model picker, and start chatting quickly. Or you can do the full setup if you're a power user and want to configure everything more carefully. They also added Hermes portal as the human-readable command for the portal onboarding flow. This is another one of those changes that sounds small but is actually important, because the first 5 minutes of a tool matter a lot. If someone installs an agent and immediately gets stuck choosing providers, credentials, models, tools, and configuration paths, they may just quit. Quick setup makes Hermes more approachable, and I think that is the right move. Now, the model picker also improved a lot. It now has fuzzy search across the desktop app, the web dashboard, the TUI, and the CLI. So if you only remember part of a model name, you can type a few letters and find it. Multi-endpoint providers are grouped more cleanly too, so the list should be less messy. The catalog refreshes hourly instead of daily, which means new models can show up much faster. And in this release window, they added models like DeepSeek V4 Flash, Minimax M3 with 1 million context, QN 3.7 Plus, and Gemini 3.5 Flash in the relevant pickers. I like this a lot because Hermes is at its best when it is not locked to one provider. You can use a cheaper model for simple tasks. You can use a stronger cloud model when the job is harder. You can use local models when privacy or cost matters. and you can route all of that from the same system. So, improving the model picker is not just a UI polish thing, it directly affects how practical Hermes is day to day. Another feature I really like is /undo. This lets you take back the last end turns. So if you sent the wrong prompt, or the agent started going in the wrong direction, you can back up, edit the previous message, and resend. It works in the CLI, the 2E, and messaging platforms like Telegram and Discord. That is super useful. Because with agents, one bad prompt can waste a lot of time, and sometimes you do not want to start a brand new session. You just want to rewind a little bit and steer the conversation correctly. So /undo is a practical quality of life feature. They also improved interface choice. You can now choose whether Hermes Chat opens the classic CLI or the 2E by default. And the 2E now has a single /model command and a unified sessions overlay. So if you prefer the terminal interface, this release still has improvements for you. It is not desktop only. The CLI, 2E, web dashboard, desktop app, and messaging surfaces are all getting more consistent. Now, let's talk about skills. The default skill set has been trimmed. Hermes removed redundant or dead skills from the default bundle, moved heavier niche skills to optional installs, and added relevance gates. So, context-specific skills do not show up for users who do not need them. In normal terms, the default setup should be less noisy. That matters because skills are powerful, but too many irrelevant skills can make the agent messier. It can increase context, confuse selection, and make the UI feel crowded. So, I like this change. They are not just adding more and more forever, they are also pruning. There is also a new Trusted NVIDIA Skills tab in the Skills Hub. So, NVIDIA skills now sit alongside OpenAI, Anthropic, and Hugging Face as a trusted skills source. That means CUDA-X, AIQ, Compute, and other NVIDIA-related skills can be discovered and installed through the same Skills Hub flow. That is interesting, especially for people working with GPU, optimization, or NVIDIA-specific tooling. Messaging also got better. There is a more structured streaming event protocol. Telegram gets draft formatting parity. There are per-platform streaming defaults, dashboard toggles, Discord voice channel improvements, Faciu meeting invitation handling, Matrix command aliases, Blue Bubbles group mention gating, and a bunch of gateway reliability fixes. I'm not going to pretend every viewer needs every one of those integrations, but the direction is important. Hermes is trying to be available wherever work happens. For some people, that is the desktop app. For some, it is Slack or Discord. For some, it is Telegram. For some, it is a self-hosted dashboard. And for serious automation, that multi-surface approach is more useful than a tool that only lives inside one terminal window. Security and reliability also got a meaningful pass. They pinned a patched Starlet version for CVE 2026-48710. They hardened SSRF checks. They stripped certain SOAP-process credentials. They improved file safety guards. They restored approval and pseudo-context in execute code paths. And they added more dangerous Docker patterns to the safety layer. This part is not flashy, but it matters. The more capable an agent becomes, the more important the guardrails become. If an agent can run tools, talk to messaging platforms, manage credentials, connect to gateways, and operate remotely, then security cannot be treated like an afterthought. There are also a lot of bug fixes. The release notes say 399 issues were closed in this window. For desktop specifically, they fixed things like new chats vanishing on refresh, the stop button not interrupting queued turns properly, background session messages bleeding into the active transcript, completion menu navigation, escape dismissal, and IME enter behavior. Those are exactly the kinds of fixes that make an app feel less fragile. Not everyone is a headline feature, but together they matter. So, my overall take is pretty simple. Hermes Agent 0.16 is one of the most important Hermes releases so far. Not because it adds one magical new agent feature, but because it makes Hermes easier to access, easier to manage, and easier to explain. The desktop app gives normal users a real interface. The web dashboard becomes a real admin panel. Remote gateway support makes it useful for server-based and team-style setups. Quick setup makes onboarding less annoying. The fuzzy model picker makes provider flexibility more usable. /undo makes mistakes less painful. The skill cleanup reduces noise, and the security and bug fix work makes the whole thing feel more serious. It is still not a basic chatbot. And if you only want a simple AI coding assistant, Hermes may still be overkill. But if you care about open source agents, local and remote workflows, model routing, skills, messaging platforms, scheduled jobs, and multi-agent work, this release is very interesting. For me, the biggest thing is that Hermes is becoming less hidden. The power was already there. Now it is getting surfaced in ways normal people can actually use. and that is exactly what an agent platform needs. Overall, it's pretty cool. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this video, consider donating through the Super Thanks option or becoming a member by clicking the Join button. Also, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye.